And in speaking with the literacy coordinator, who I had worked with previously on the leadership team, and we'd also been very close together in our workings, we talked about how we could get fathers involved at the school, because my observations have been that, you know, we didn't see many dads at school. It was predominantly mums. Many parents didn't go past the front office. And any involvement in classrooms was from mothers. There was very little from dads. And in my role as special ed coordinator, I generally saw mothers as well at PSGs. There was the odd time where I saw dads, but generally speaking, it was mothers. And so I wanted to see whether I could target the fathers to help create partnerships and links between home and school. So the way that I did that was I initially surveyed the children to just give me a quick hands up on who reads with dad, and I had 6 out of 26 from a class of grade 1 students, and so I thought, well, perfect, I'll see if it can work in there. And I sent home some information for the fathers and asked their permission, and then was devastated to find out that not many of them wanted to participate. Now, whether it was the way that I had presented the information, or they felt that they were too busy, or that it was a language background issue, I wasn't too sure at that stage. But the children were also very, very disappointed that their dads didn't want to be involved. And some of the reasons that they gave me were, my dad's a lazy dad, my dad works, my dad can't speak English, I lost my notice, or it got thrown in the bin. So we talked about it, we had a brainstorm session with the children about ways that we could perhaps include dad if he couldn't speak English, or he was busy at work. And it was decided by them that even if dad couldn't speak English, they could still share the story by them talking about it in their own language or looking at the pictures, and that it wasn't about English, it was about that time together and that reading time together and developing that relationship. And if they were working, I said, you know, that's okay, it can be just a time that suits dad, and maybe you can negotiate a time. I initially asked them to read from 3 to 4 times a week, just so that was an option that they could do it in the weekend or during the week or whatever suited them. But I did say to the children that, you know, if dad can only do it 1 or 2 times a week, then that's okay as well. So they went home with a reading journal, they went home with some information about how they could read with their dad, and they went home to try and persuade. I did send any information that I sent home, it was in English or Vietnamese, which was the predominant language in the class. Most other fathers could get by with English, and we also had a Sudanese ethnic aide at the school, so if there was any difficulty, those parents or those dads could consult him if need be. So I left that up to the kids to go home and see what would happen, and they came back, and the result was, you know, was really good. There was a lot more willingness to take part. I think when they realised that it wasn't going to be like take-home readers or anything like that, that it was purely a time together, that it was an enjoyment time, that it was a time where they could select a book together, and that seemed to take the pressure off a little bit. We had a brainstorm session together, the children and I, after they came back, about the things that dad does and the things that dad likes to do. And with that in mind, we went to the school library, and the children selected a book that they would like to read with their dad. And they went home that night and they completed a Venn diagram, and it was what my dad likes about the book, what I liked about the book, and what we liked about it together. So they were working together on that, and it was a really good collegial activity for them. And they came back each time really excited and really enthusiastic about the time that they'd had, and I'd have a sort of a chat with them whenever I was able to come out to school, and I'd give them the sentence starter, you know, when I read with my dad, and they said, you know, things like great, makes me feel excited, I'm happy to choose the book, you know, all those sorts of things, all those positive comments. They also wrote an invitation. We collectively wrote a letter to invite Dad to come in and, if he had time, to come and read to the class, because we're very, very mindful that a lot of these dads work shift, work during the hours of school, all those sorts of things. So it was purely on an invitation basis only. If they had the time, then we would love to see them come into the classroom. And we actually did have a couple of dads come in, which was fantastic, and the kids were excited. You know, the enthusiasm was palpable in the room. It was fantastic to see. And I think, interestingly, out of that, one of the dads was a Sudanese dad who English is not a first language, and the other dad was a stepdad. So it showed me really that it crossed the bounds of culture and also family dynamics and family makeup, that, you know, there is a way to connect between home and school, and it doesn't necessarily have to be big and all-encompassing. And when these dads came in, they interacted with the children, they asked them questions, and you could just see the look on the kids' faces. They were hanging off their words. It was fantastic. And in speaking to one of the little girls whose dad came in, she said, "I felt really proud to see Dad in class," which was really nice to hear, because I think, you know, from what I had observed, was that mainly it was the mums that we see, and the mums pick them up and drop them off and drop the notes, and on occasion come to excursions, but there aren't as many opportunities that we see dads around at school. So that was a really good learning experience for me. Another activity that we did was had a Celebrating Father's Day, because it was great for this project that it actually happened while Father's Day was happening. And so I actually couldn't be there on that day, but I had a fabulous team who I was working with. I worked collaboratively with the grade 1 teacher, and I also worked with the literacy coordinator. And without them, it would have been difficult being an outsider, because I wouldn't have been able to drive the project to make a change as easily as if I didn't have contacts within the school. So on that day, the literacy coordinator read a story to them about my dad and my dad's talents, and then the children went back to the table, and there were 6 dads who came along that day, and it was in the afternoon, so some of them had given up work to come in, and they sat with groups of children and made cards for their own fathers, and they also made paper planes together with the kids, and then went outside to do a paper plane flying competition. And the literacy coordinator, she said I was really surprised to see how much of an interactive session it really was, with the dads sitting at the table, you know, these tiny little chairs, and, you know, big men at these tables, and just the way that the kids had really started to interact with the dads, and the ones who'd come in before using them as using their first name. So there was that link starting to occur. And she said, you know, taking time to reflect. Generally speaking, mothers are the primary caregiver. Most teachers are female, so we don't always see lots of males with kids during the day at school. And actually at this school, there is quite a high percentage of male teachers, but I think it's different when it comes from, you know, from Dad. And it was really good to see them there in the classroom. Excuse me. The other thing that we did was hold an information session, and it was at 2 different times of the day, trying to cater for work habits and all those sorts of things. I had one in the afternoon and one in the evening, and I had 5 dads come in total, and I think, you know, out of a class of 26, I was really, really pleased with that. And I think the thing that struck me most about that was how much they had really got out of this. They really commented that they liked the structure of it. They liked the structure of filling in the reading journal. They liked the structure of having an activity to do with their child. They felt that the reading had a purpose, and they really liked that time together. A couple of the dads who came, who had previously always done the reading with their children, said it really made it gave it a whole lot more of a focus in the home, because the child was saying, you know, this is our reading time, this is our time together, and really forcing them to do the reading. So he said, and it wasn't just the focus on class reading books, it had to be on something that we chose together. And another dad, he said, what I really noticed was the effect that my praise had on my child. He said, I really noticed, he said, I became sort of attuned to how she reacted to when her mother said, well done, or good job, or anything like that. She was sort of, you know, she reacted to it. But he said, I noticed when I said it to her, she sort of sat up straighter. And he said, you know, I could see the importance of me being involved in her learning. And I guess there were two female teachers running the information session. We said, you know, as much as we don't always want to hear that sort of thing, you can really see the value and the importance, and it makes children see that Dad values reading, that Dad values what they're doing at school, and it strengthens that bond between child and parent. And I had done a lot of reading about similar studies. There was a study in the UK, it was called FRED, Fathers Reading Every Day, and it had found similar sorts of things, that, you know, having fathers wanted to have that structure in their reading. They wanted to have that time with them, and it increased the bond in their relationship. I think perhaps if I was doing something like this again, I'd probably try and incorporate a bit of sport in there. That was something that the dads seemed to say is a thing that they all enjoy, whether they're sporty people themselves, they enjoy that thing. It's that, you know, outside bonding, connecting time. And I think if I could provide a little bit more of that sort of thing, I think that would really connect with dads. And I think it shows that irrespective of background and language barriers and where you've come from and where you work and how much money you earn, reading is an activity that can be undertaken easily at home, and it can be reached by all, and it definitely makes links between home and school. It doesn't have to be something where they have to come into school and do something all the time. I didn't want there to be the onus that Dad had to come into school, and it had to be that they had to be in there helping. It was just that I wanted them to be able to see that something this small can make great links between home and school.